Welcome again. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday. This is the second video going through last week and the week ahead. So we're going to do the NASDAQ now and the Russell Index, the more, I guess, speculative end of the stock market. So I'm not going to go over a lot of the fundamental, crowd and Powell, etc. that we went through on the S&P, so we can keep it nice and short. So do yourself a favor, go listen to that. And remember, always smash the like button and subscribe. And of course, this is not financial advice, just going through what we see as traders that have done pretty well and what's influencing the market. And it's good to get it ahead of time and have a plan. So as most of you know, what we've been looking for on the NASDAQ in particular has been the weakest. We're looking at the weekly here. And you can see what got us excited, even probably more so. This was probably more leading than the S&P actually, because it actually did a false break of the month ago move down with all that fear at the start of the week. Came through the week, we broke through that downtrend, and look where we closed, just above the Tenkan. So obviously what we need to hold is the Tenkan, resistance is the top of the cloud, the 50 and the Cajun. So that's some powerful stuff above there. We all know our downtrend. Same thing here, 1, 2, 3. This move down. You can actually see a 5 here if you really want to look at it. Same thing, is this a 3 or a 5? And we correct off that for your Elliott peeps. Okay, let's move on real quick to breaking it down. Here's another look at that weekly where I highlight just the Tenkan and that 50 WMA test, which if you remember, all that test on the way down, and this big pink line is our big support. So remember, people tend to just look at what just happened, but a lot of these are reflective, and this should be a good point to remind you on things like gamma plays, particularly the quarterlies with all the expirations. So a lot of these options are put on with that in mind at shops. So that's why this was such a big level. There would have been a lot of put action support from here down. Remember, a lot of these puts are hedging positions they've kept on. And also, that's all. We also say always look at Apple in particular and Microsoft, the ones that make up this index. And there may be internals that are leading. You know, you got your Teslas when it's hot. Obviously, Apple, as I just mentioned. So you can see more clearly here the 50 WMA test, which we were able to do really, really well when we were shorting on the S&P as well as on here. So we got that resistance there. Let's move on to the daily real quickly. Look at this. It's a thing of beauty. You can see that even more so. This was, if those are now getting familiar with Nova Wave, remember it's all these components. Technically, then fundamentally order flow. And just, you know, and it's important to get ahead of the curve, recognizing how the crowd reacts to the events. And you want to be well ahead of it in the macro framework. Macro isn't just a buzzword. It used to mean, and it should mean, the different elements in bonds, stocks, currencies, all this stuff, how it influences each other, right? It's just not a war here, a war there. It's how it all interacts and influences and where the different bifurcations and put together a matrix. Okay, so here you can see it. This is much better even than the S&P, and it also gave you positive divergence if you want to look intra-market, which is another way to look at things, right? So here's our daily. We had a nice pop-up here. Through the Tenkan, Cajun did a little bit of work, but not much. This was also that breakdown. And so remember, you're looking at your open interest at the key level, so 1400, and then look at what that is on the Qs. We touched a little bit on that on the S&P, but that's a really, really big component of what you should be looking for with all this stuff, right? So keep an eye on all that. And it just makes it easy. If you want to, so the reason we use also what the idea of Nova Wave is trading time and price to the future, not looking at stuff that's happened in the past late. And as I said, the biggest reason I worry about dribblers is they don't really. It's easy to be a hobbyist in what really goes on, and it was great those big bull markets. If you managed to, if the dips came good and they came up, right, then it all looks like as the way to trade or invest. As you've seen in the last little month, pretty quickly here,
they don't really.
You could argue
it's easy to be a hobby.
The Lord giveth and taketh it away, right? Not to be blasphemous on Sunday, but there is some truth in that. It wasn't intended to be blasphemous, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's look on to that, right? So in other words, you can keep it pretty tight, and you want to increase your probability because it's all a probability game. So it's measuring that risk. And with computers and algorithms running everything and having to match because of VAR and everything, optionality is very important. It's also a great tool you can use, not just for options, but for your ETFs if you're trading QQQs in this situation, or the NQ futures, which are very violent. Look where it closed, right at 2.8, so minus 2.8. It actually spat it, right? So this isn't as sweet as the measured move, as you can see on other, for example, on the SPOOs, but it did get over here to complete your bearish. This can be a B flat if you're a bear, to be an ABC, if you're looking for a bear thing, or this can be the fifth of all that. So just keep it all open-minded and keep it math-related. Remember, algorithms don't have emotions. And you shouldn't either trading, right? So don't get emotional with it. You can see you've got the helium twist that we talked about in the S&P, but not as perfect, but still the same thing, right? But not as perfectly lined up, but pretty dang good. So you got that there, and you know how that all works with that. Okay, let's look at the 60-minute real quick. Actually, let's make this whoops, sorry about that. Let's make this a compress this a little bit better. Sorry, beg your pardon it. Now too far. Like I said, I do them live. So, as we go back and forward trying to get this right, I'm trying to capture this for you. So, if we measure the same, and we're doing this on an hourly, that's a little bit too far, but you'll get the gist. So we came down here, but we did an overextend. So we did, if you remember Adam's theory, we're looking for a fractal. So that's this, measured that. This is a bit I'm trying to show you. So that, then we look at the measured move, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus the fractal. Notice this is 9. In other words, a minus 1/8. This is actually minus 2/8, but so it went one handle more than the S&P. One square more. Right? And so you can count out what it did. So knowing it gave you a good, actually, this is actually performing much weaker than the SPOOs. The SPOOs got up here, but it gave you your minimum target of a fractal. Remember, these are just possibilities. You work them out at the start of the week. What they can do when you're buying cheap optionality. Or doing your, however you trade, if you're doing the more the swing situation. Okay, so that's a good look at what we got. On the hourly, you can see what we need to do, right? Remember, you look at the cloud, you got all this. You're watching what's going on here tomorrow on the Tankin and the Cage. And does this become a kiss of life, or are we going to roll over? Okay, look where we are. We're at plus 8/8 from minus 1/8. So the outside fractal we did, so that's a full eighth, right? And plus. And then you've got this up here of your targets. Compare that to where, for your bull, if we're going to continue gapping up on the daily and weekly. Remember what this was, though. This is a big reversal, and as we were saying, for 2 weeks, and other good traders out there who run good systems like Wi-Fi and people like that some of you follow on Twitter. But that's a lot of what goes on at Goldman, Morgan, this sort of stuff, right? You see this reversal, you jump on, you know where it is, and then you got to follow it. Follow your delta. Okay. I think any answers there, just shoot me to me. Any questions or answers? Okay, let's look at Rusty real quick. So Rusty, we're going to show you two things. One, if you read that weekly report, which is right here, if you just to know what you're looking at, this is it, right? This is this week's. It's on the website. What's this week's topic we got? So only a sheep lets himself be sheared. Always remember that. That's some wisdom, old Estonian proverb, but you should remember that in life as well, right? So anyway, go through this and you can see everything, the different markets, the breakdown, what to look for, a recovery, a great recovery by the markets, but is it temporary or is it lasting? So go through all those technical and all the different macro elements that make up the world's economy and therefore the world's financial markets. So good stuff. Get into that. Enjoy it, share it, subscribe, whatever you want to do. There's also a forum there you can look at people. There's a lot of people that don't want to be on Twitter in particular, right? And all those different social medias. Anyway, so the perfect thing, what we loved about this, trouble is you still got to have optionality. So that does get expensive when it bounces, but if you're doing it right, that's basically your cost of doing business to protect your downside, right? So look at this perfectly. Double bottom like all of them, just like the NASDAQ. But as Madavi was calling out each week, the Russell's been the stronger one. So this one didn't get as damaged. Remember what we just saw on NASDAQ and on S&P. So on a weekly basis, what I like is it did its minimum target of 38.2% of a healthy market correction. That's correcting from this low to that low, right? Obviously, you can go all the way down 61%. So if this, again, is this a 3 or a 5? So is this completion? That's your bull. Whereas this is a 3 or even a 1 of something really, if money becomes worthless scenario. So that's why we watch the ABCs. Notice this didn't get higher than this though. If you look at the S&P and so whilst it's been strong in the last 3 weeks, it hasn't got. This was obviously a lot weaker, so therefore it hasn't captured that. So to be true, to replicate those two markets, this should be above that. Now we can also make this a 5, and therefore this is the ABC. So don't get too much into that. What we do know is this. We do know this is our major break line, and we mentioned that in. So I'm showing you how I work all these out. So we're going through the different markets. And you can see that's that big critical support line. We look at the different. This is without. I want to show you this without the fibs. And look what that is. It's basically the 7/8. Remember, this got almost a 4/8. So this got at the top of. This is your most speculative. Look how much this overran the other markets, right? And this is just clinical stuff. Know your patterns. Okay. Let's go back to Rusty. So on a daily basis, you can see what's happened. There's your double bottom. We got over that 50, which had been holding it down. We did a spit here. This time we did do a spit, but we regathered it, right? This is PAL day. We regathered it. So you keep an eye. That's a spit of a spit there, which has a bit of power. Power, which fueled this almost 80 handle. It's almost 100, right? Run here. So you can see that's your big resistance again, right? This line right across to keep it simple. And that's just above the cloud. So this is big stuff, big resistance here. It needs to get through. On a 60-minute, again, real classical stuff. -1/8, double bottom rules. Remember all that. Acceleration, the Powell effect. And remember, this is not... So have you noticed the more stable the index is, the more true a Tenkan holds? Right? There's less... there's more depth and volume to it. And so this has a lot less than a NASDAQ. So keep that in mind. And so even more so, you want your 3 rules of confluence to play out. Okay, so there's all your levels and everything you need to know. So work back, top down. 3... your 3 different reasons. You want your different time periods, weekly, daily, 240, 60. We just went through the 60 on his. I was trying to get through these nice and quick for you. Another thing to do is look at, like we do on NASDAQ and S&P, get a handle on which sectors the market's buying and selling. And you want to be ahead of that, right? So, for example, Apple, we were all buying all those calls down at 54, 55, right? You don't want to be the bloke buying it at 65. You want to be the guy looking to take profit or deciding whether he does. So that's why it's important to be ahead. And, and you recognize this as opportunities, not as points of fear. When I see people out there after the, just... Anyway, you know what I'm going to say, so I'm not going to say it. So there you go. I'm going to try to get through a few more of these. It is Sunday, it is family day. We're just trying to bang these out. Hopefully they're valuable to people. Share them if you like them, and all that good stuff. Later.